new baby seedling, golden chamomile. Here's a celery plant, mushy and moldy, and revolving salad bar. This is a lot of chamomile. It's fine. It's fine. Good morning. Welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. I have a garden update for you today, and it's another one of those updates where it's like, this is what the garden looked like before it died, because I really think that what I have already set out for spring is not going to make it. So a little bit of context and backstory for new people. We are growing in Zone 7A in southwestern Kentucky, and we have about a 200-day growing season where we don't get freezes. We are very blessed for that. Our winters can be hit or miss, whether they are cold, whether they are warm, whether they just go back and forth. And this happens to have been a really back and forth winter. And when you're trying to grow things like broccoli, it's not good. Most of the time, what ails my very early spring garden is birds. I will have lots of birds coming down, picking at the green leaves of my new baby seedlings, and a lot of times it kills them. So this year I decided to spend a decent amount of money on these little like trash cans, essentially these little metal grate trash cans, and they're working really well. They've been through a couple different storms, and looks like I only have one that fell over. This guy right here, the little cabbage down there, it's okay, at least for now. As you can see, I've got my winter jacket on today. We are going to experience a really cold week coming up. It's blowing in right now. We've got wind coming in from the north. You can probably hear it. These plants have somewhat acclimated, but I don't think they've acclimated enough for the intense freeze that's coming tonight. It's going to be 20 degrees. I think that the coldest these plants have seen has been like 30, so that's a lot. And then in just a few days, our low is 11, and it could drop into single digits easily. So right now, I'm battling a little bit about what to do. These brassicas may or may not survive. I could cover them and hope for getting them through. One of the things that makes winter gardening easier, especially when you get some cold snaps, is if that cold snap is coming along with snow. Ours is not. Actually, we're getting 6 inches of rain before the freeze comes, and so putting some frost fabric over this could work out okay, but also it's just going to get drenched. It could crush these kind of cheap trash cans that I have. We'll see. I might as well try instead of not try, but I'm really not expecting much, so I'm not going to put just a ton of effort and hope into this. What I do know is if I never started these plants, I never would have gotten anything, so at least there was a little bit of hope of getting something, because on a good year we can definitely get a really amazing harvest, and we got spoiled with that for a couple years. But I think this is going to be another year where we do not have spring brassicas, unfortunately. But here's my beautiful broccoli. It's done really well for us in the past. I grew some in the greenhouse this fall. Over here, as we saw, these are red cabbages, and over here is a purple of Sicily cauliflower. I have a little trash can over where a volunteer asparagus plant grew last year, just to help protect it for when it comes up. Back here is the asparagus bed, which I started to clean out, and then I found ants in there, so I gotta deal with that. The thing that works best for me for ants is diatomaceous earth. I just sprinkle it in the soil and, I don't know, work it in, and it happens to, I guess, at least irritate the ants enough to move on. But that's one thing that isn't gonna work well if it keeps raining like it is. I did notice that a few of my walking onions are alive. A lot of them got kind of choked out with weeds this year, so it's my fault that I don't have very many of them anymore. I had planted some here, and then I planted some here at the base of these muscadine grapevines, which I have not trimmed. I read that I should wait until, you know, closer to our last frost. Definitely not before this freeze that we're getting. I do have strawberry bed over here that could really use some cleaning out. A lot of this really could have used some cleaning out a lot sooner than now, but I had my goats having babies in this past week, and that's really where my attention was. Down here last year I planted some Callaway golden chamomile, and I can see it coming back. This is awesome. You can also see some different plants. We've got henbit here. These are just some wild weeds, and this is purple dead nettle. These guys I like to leave in the garden as long as I can. These are the first forages that the bees get in springtime. So I like to leave them until they're really starting to get in my way. And by then, there's a whole lot of stuff out for the bees to eat. I've got plans for this area. My celery plants that you saw in the start trays, those guys are gonna go here. I haven't had a ton of success with celery in the past, and I think one of the areas that I've gone wrong is putting them out too soon. I guess that celery can bolt or go to flower if it's too cold, so I need to wait until it's warmer. Here's the celery plants right here. They're about 8 or 9 weeks old right now. I recently transplanted them into these pots, and I have them out during the day, and then I stick them in our climate controlled shed in here overnight. And I am gonna do that with these. This is just more of the Purple of Sicily cauliflower that really wasn't very big when I transplanted the other cauliflower out, but I need to put them out at some point. I am gonna wait for this freeze to pass, just because if I lose all of that that's out there, we've got a little bit of harvest here. Oh, that's not what I thought I had. That looks like bird netting. Yeah, this is insect netting. Well, because we're going to have basically a week of really cold temperatures, I had hoped to put some frost fabric over those brassicas out there with the little trash cans over them and kind of just leave it there. Frost fabric is kind of translucent. It will let some light through. The situation for the broccoli may have just gotten a little bit more dire because I thought that was frost fabric. You know, got more bird netting. Check it out. These are my pink daffodils. Those guys will probably die back, but they'll come back. Daffodils really can handle a beating, and those are established. There's nothing growing in the kids' garden right now, just some plastic snakes. We are gonna make our garden plan for these guys soon. I think we're gonna have to put some electric netting around their garden because the cats are using it as a bathroom. It's not the best. I have this rose that I let grow here last year. This is actually an invasive species. This is called multiflora rose. We used to harvest from the multiflora rose. You can put the petals in tea, and also the rose hips that come off of them are really great for teas and things as well. It's really great for the immune system, lots of vitamin C, but the patch that we had been harvesting from across the street has since been mowed down or sprayed or something. It's not there anymore, and I have had a few comments of people telling me that I'm gonna regret leaving this here because the birds are gonna spread the seed and whatnot. I may regret leaving it at one point, but also it's kind of one of those things, I didn't plant it here, it just happened to grow, and it is something that I know I can harvest some beneficial things from. And so if I'm harvesting most of the rose hips with the seed and things in it, then hopefully it can be decently contained. I did have some goats in this area last year, and the goats really ate all the leaves back, but it looks like it survived. So you've got some leaves coming back. If we feel like we've really got to get rid of it, we can. It's just one of those things we don't have, besides like nettles and dock, if you know what that is. We probably come across some dock walking around here. There's not a lot of like forageable stuff. We do have some of these like wild chives, these spring onion type things that are growing that we have harvested from before. But stuff like that, because our land was old tobacco field, it's just been wiped out. Everything good has been wiped out, and I was really happy to see it when it popped up. So for now, it's there. Alrighty, here's the greenhouse. We did get some rain for 2 days in a row, and so it's really muddy. And I know a lot of you know about the mud situation, but we've got quite a few new people here, so I wanted to kind of clarify some things. We've gotten a lot of very helpful suggestions of what we should do to help with the muddy land situation that we have here. Here's the thing, out of all of the properties around us, our property, it is the bottom. So one of the suggestions that we got a lot on a video where we talked about the mud and the runoff and everything was to grade the land, which means you dig it down at certain angles to help move the water where you'd like it to be, away from structures and things that you don't want it near. I am pretty sure that everybody around us has graded towards our property, because literally everywhere else You can watch it happen. It just drains straight onto our land, which is one of the reasons that we have such a big problem. It's one of the reasons that our pond was dug down at the end. 4 properties drain into our pond. It's one of the reasons that I don't even try to stock it with anything, because 3 of the 4 properties do big agriculture and they spray and the runoff goes into the water and the fish go belly up. I've seen it. So we feel like digging is just gonna create more of an issue. We'd basically be digging a whole bunch of ponds, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea, but that huge pond that we have down at the end of our property fills up and it actually drains out into the ditch, and the ditch itself overflows onto the street. And so really, truly, honestly, there's nowhere for the water to go if we dig. That's why we have elected to build up. So in here in the greenhouse, we're growing up in raised beds, and that is the only reason I have any living green plants in the greenhouse right now. I'm so grateful that I have these. A lot of these plants have gone through some super cold weather, so I have hope. They're also older, so they're more established than the seedlings that I have in the raised bed garden, although some of them have taken a decent hit. I think we'll start on this side. I do have this green stalk of strawberries that I recently trimmed back. I've got some strawberry volunteers growing through the weed fabric here, but these guys have been in here for a while. I do need to come through and fertilize in here, but I'm looking forward to that. That's Monty. He's a menace. We love him though, huh? Monty is running around some of my plants. These are Nanking cherries that I'm gonna find a spot for this year. If you don't ruin them, can you be gentle with my cherries? Oh, he listens so well. Monty, I'm gonna kick you out. Sorry. There's some benefits and there's some drawbacks as a gardener of having cats. I love cats. One of our big issues that we do have on our farm is a rodent problem, and the rodents, they'll do your garden in. We've had them in here even when I've had the doors shut and things and not allowed the cats in. But when the cat starts to be more problem than the rodents, the cat's gotta go. He can still weasel in here. This thing isn't super tight to the ground, and he may, because he wants to hang out with us. But I was talking about how some of these plants have been shocked a little bit by some of the freezes that we've had. You can see the standing water right here where this bed is. But in here I do have, there is some cauliflower, which, see, that head is gone. So we can use these leaves, but that's about all the good that plant is gonna do for us. I think this one is a Brussels sprout, and those guys are coming in down there. Brussels sprouts are quite cold hardy, so I still have hope for these guys. But can you see the damage on this cabbage head right here? That's likely from frost, and it's just mushy and moldy, and maybe I could take that off, but honestly I don't know if it's gonna survive what we've got coming, so I'm just gonna leave it and see what happens. So here's another cabbage with some freeze and frost damage. This guy looks okay. Beautiful. We'll see. We'll probably get something more than just leaves out of this bed. This cabbage looks pretty good too. They do get a lot bigger. I did recently harvest all of the bok choy that I had growing on the end there, and we do have this yodfa broccoli growing here, which is finally starting to do some sprouting. This is what we grow it for. It's kind of like a cross between a broccoli and an asparagus. Not actually, but that's what it's like. See this here? And we should be able just to harvest and harvest and harvest until they start getting bitter, which takes quite a while because these guys are pretty heat tolerant. So I'm rooting for those guys. Over here, it's just about time for me to harvest from the Ragged Jack kale again. I've gotten quite a few harvests off of these plants, and I really need to harvest the green parts of the peas. We have way too much nitrogen going on in the greenhouse, and I do have plans to remedy that this year. But good thing is leafy greens love nitrogen, so these have been growing really well. Nice big leaves. I've just been harvesting from the sides and letting the new ones grow up the middle, and it's like revolving salad bar. I love it. Speaking of salad bar, I had sprinkled this lettuce in here a long time ago. This was a lettuce blend, and we've got a couple different lettuces here. You can see the different colors. But for how much nitrogen is supposed to be in the soil, this really hasn't been growing a lot. I am noticing already, you see those bugs down there? We've got whiteflies and we've got aphids already in the greenhouse. So part of me wants to just open the thing up and let it do a hard freeze in here and maybe take care of those things, but there's enough places for bugs like that to hide. They can hide under the mulch and survive. So I don't know, I've got plans to try to remedy the situation in here with the aphids and whiteflies. They are attracted to the plants in here and to the beds because of the excess nitrogen. And so really that is the main project in here for next year, is to deal with the nitrogen, because I can't grow well with all of the bugs and things that are attracted to all the nitrogen. The reason that we have so much nitrogen in here is we do amend with our barn cleanouts, so manures and things. I have used hay to help me fill up some of these beds, and I had used a bagged soil that had quite a bit of like barky bits. We might not find just a bunch of barky bits. I guess there are some, but big pieces of wood and bark in the soil will use up nitrogen in order to break themselves down. Oh man, do you guys see this? Monty! I love my cat, I love my cat, I love my cat. It's fine. It's fine. I've had cats my whole life. I know how they are. But when the barky bits are broken down in the soil, that nitrogen just goes right back into the soil. And so last year, in order to grow in these beds, I had amended some with like a balanced fertilizer that did contain nitrogen. And now that some of the nitrogen has been released from the soil itself, from breaking down the bark, there's too much nitrogen in here. These bonfire peach trees that I have in these containers, this will be their second year, and it looks like we do have some buds coming on. I had a question about freeze hours for these types of trees. And a lot of fruiting plants that are perennials, like blueberries and things, a lot of fruit trees, they require a certain amount of chill hours in order to set fruit. The bonfire peach trees that we have require 400 chill hours, and I'm pretty sure we've gotten that already this year and we're not done freezing. So these guys should fruit again for us. I did allow them to fruit the first year that I had them. You're supposed to kind of pick off the developing fruit and allow the plant to put energy into the roots, but I did get 5 or 6 beautiful little peaches last year, and we're hoping for more this year, plus more branch growth. With trees and things, they say the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, so you'll see a little bit of growth, and then the third year they will leap, so we'll get a good amount of growth and probably even more fruit next year. This green stalk that I have here, we already sowed with some herbs. I had treated this kind of like winter sowing. You've probably seen people doing this. There's a lot of videos out there on this right now, but a lot of people will start some cold tolerant seeds, and sometimes even not cold tolerant seeds, in milk jugs, and it acts like a little mini greenhouse. And I thought maybe I could replicate something like that in my big greenhouse. And so we do have some germination here. I can't remember all of what is where, but I do know that the top tier is chamomile. This is a lot of chamomile, so it's gonna need some thinning. It may just automatically thin itself out as the bigger plants shade out the smaller plants, but we've got germination here. There's germination here. This looks like it's probably dill. I can see some of the seeds on the top. We've got germination here. Some germination here. There's a little plant. And I don't see any germination yet on the bottom tier. Again, I can't remember what I put on the bottom tier, but I am a little bit worried about this because I think that winter sowing works best in areas where you have a consistent amount of cold over the winter time. It's not what we get here. It was not very long ago where it was over 70 degrees and I had to have the doors open and the fans on in here because it was very warm. And now we're going to be dipping down to 11. And if I have cloudy days like this, there's really not a lot of heat that stays in the greenhouse. It'll be just as cold in here as it is outside, but there is a little bit of heat that's captured in this wet floor here and in the beds, because the beds have a lot of moisture, and so they act a little bit like thermal batteries to release some heat, but it's not a lot, especially on cloudy days. So what is the plan to try to rectify the nitrogen issues that I have here in the greenhouse? Well, the plants that I have out in the raised bed garden, those broccolis and things that are probably going to succumb to the freeze that we have coming up, I had originally planned to have them in here right now. But as soon as I started seeing the aphids and the whiteflies, I knew that I probably needed to do something a little bit drastic so that I could really get a handle on that this year. So the plan is to essentially fill this entire greenhouse with onions. I just bought a ton of onions from Dixondale Farms. I believe they're getting delivered at the end of this month, beginning of next month, and that is what I'm going to grow in here. So I will amend with some bone meal. I know that nitrogen is actually really great for growing onions. You know how onion has these leaves on them that are just these cylindrical, spiky things sticking up out of the bulb. Each leaf of the onion represents one layer of the onion, and in order to get more leaves on plants, you feed nitrogen. So we've got a lot of nitrogen in these beds. We should get decently sized onions. I am going to put down bone meal as an amendment as well, and I'm not going to be amending with manure. I will probably put something down like beneficial nematodes, because there are different things that onions can be afflicted with that I don't want to create an issue with that as well. So there's gonna be a lot of onions. I plan on planting quite a few marigolds and things. I may still plant something along the trellis here to utilize that trellis, but we're just gonna have to see. Obviously I've got some cleanup of this trellis to do still, all in good time. It will happen. This will probably volunteer back. This is Malabar spinach, and there just was a ton of seeds that fell. So I'm sure we'll see this again, and that will be welcome. This didn't seem to be affected at all by the bugs or anything that we got, so that will be nice to see again. But yeah, actually it's gonna be a pretty chill gardening year for me. I do want to plant tomatoes because I had such a cruddy tomato year last year. I do have some from a couple years prior that have carried us through, but this year I really need my tomatoes to work, so I'll be planting some tried and true varieties, and I probably won't grow them in the greenhouse because of the aphid and whitefly situation seems to be worst here. And so if my brassicas that are in the raised bed garden happen to die, it's just more space for tomatoes, so that's why I'm not super worried about it. We try our best to get the fall and spring brassicas to work. This year I did get some fall brassicas, and that was amazing. We still have some in here that could make it through this freeze, and so not all is lost. As soon as this cold week is done though, I've got some plans to do some clean out in here to get ready for the onions. I've never grown this many onions before, so it's going to be a learning experience for me that I will document. If you have some advice about growing some good onions, I would love to hear it. I'll see you guys again soon.